This is Steve Winzenburg on News Radio 1040 WHO. We have the strangest pet names from a book called A Cat Named Rush Limbaugh, a Dog Named Howard Stern. And we're going to be taking some of your calls in a few minutes. We have 5 copies of the book to give away, and we're going to be taking your calls with your strange pet names. Could be cats, dogs, frogs, rabbits, everything. And the author of the book is with us. Francis Pfaff is his name. And Francis, welcome to 1040 WHO Radio. Thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Good morning, Steve, and good morning, Des Moines.
Francis, tell us about your background, how you got into this whole pet thing.
Well, I've worked in pet supply stores in and around New York City for many, many years, and as you can imagine, pet owners are an enthusiastic breed who love to discuss their pets and their names and the history behind their names. So I began taking notes a few years ago with the hope of one day producing a book, and here we are.
And what were some of the first ones that you remember as striking you as unusual?
Well, one that caught my attention right away was the finch named Captain Picard. And that was named that because it had a red breast that reminded the owner of a Star Trek uniform, and the poor bird was missing a few feathers on the top of his head, and that's
That's good. So you're not just talking about cats and dogs, it's all sorts of pets.
We got all sorts of pets in this book. Ferrets, guinea pigs, a few lizards.
Why do people name their pets such strange things like Captain Picard or something like that?
Well, that was a resemblance. There are some pets are named after celebrities. Some are based on the situation that introduced the pet into the owner's life. Some have no meaning other than that peculiar meaning to the owner. So
yeah, until I'd read your book, I'd never really thought about this. Our family doesn't really have a pet. We have a goldfish, but I don't worry about that. But we don't have cats or dogs or anything, so I have never thought about having to name a pet. But it is probably very similar to the process of having to name a child, right? You have to come up with an appropriate name, and then you got to live with it the rest of your life.
Yeah. Sometimes they try to change the name. There was a couple that adopted a dog, an older dog named Prince, because the previous owner had passed away, and they wanted to give it a new name, but the dog was so accustomed to Prince, they just started to call it the dog formerly known as Prince. And I must say that he sounds better than the artist formerly known as Prince, in my opinion.
That's good. Our guest is Francis Pfaff. He's the author of A Cat Named Rush Limbaugh, a Dog Named Howard Stern. And tell us about the title of the book. There's really a cat named Rush Limbaugh. I cannot believe that.
Well, there really is. The cat wandered in the person's home while the Limbaugh show was on the air. That's how that cat got that name.
Right.
And the dog is simply an Afghan, poor creature. It unfortunately resembles Howard Stern. That's how that got that.
That's very unfortunate. Naming pets after celebrities. I see in the book there's a Simpson in the book.
Yes, that Simpson is a 21-year-old cat that was named after O.J. when O.J. was
a good guy.
A good guy, and the cat's 21, so they're not going to change that name.
You have one that's called Chairman of the Board, and they call him Chairman for short.
Chairman for short. That was named after Sinatra. Yeah.
Some after TV shows, like Blossom.
Yes, the cat liked to fall asleep on top of the television while Blossom was playing.
Product names. Jif.
Well, they used to feed that dog. The dog wouldn't eat his food unless they smeared a little Jif peanut butter in the bowl, and hence the name Jif.
Here, Jif. Come here, Jif. McDonald. You have a McDonald in the book. Is this after, like, Ronald McDonald, type McDonald?
It is. That was an animal, I believe it was a cat, that was found foraging in a dumpster behind a McDonald's.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was in the dumpster.
Yeah, and
it likes to eat fast food now.
You know, it's too bad it wasn't the dumpster behind a Wendy's. That's a better name for a cat.
People names. One of my favorites is the Sister Lorraine story.
Well, that person had a bad experience in Catholic grammar school with a nun named Sister Lorraine, and her cat was kind of a cantankerous fat cat that reminded her of
that old nun.
But Sister Lorraine the cat, through love and nurturing, was reformed. I don't know whether the same can be said about the dear sister.
You have Davy Jones in here, and that was kind of a surprise because it's not Davy Jones the singer, is it?
Not Davy Jones the monkey, the recorder of that hit song Girl. No, it's Davy Jones Locker. And because the animal in question is a catfish.
Now, some people use literature like Hamlet and some of these types of things. That seems to be a bit much, I would think.
That's a bit much, but yes, one woman has all her animals are based on Shakespearean characters. Another woman has a pot-bellied pig named Faust, after the German fictional character.
Wow.
There are literary types. There are regular Joes. The pet owners are a cross-section of the American public.
There's all sorts of reasons. We're going to get into some of them today for why you name your pet a certain way, and we're now going to open up the phone lines. We're looking for your pet names and why did you name them that way. And then we've got copies of this book that we're going to give away at the end of the show. I'm going to pick my favorite pet names from the show this morning. We've got folks all lined up here and ready to go. Ron, you're up next. Ron, what are your pets that you're going to tell us about?
We're dachshund lovers. And we've had dachshund puppies, and we try to be as original with the names as possible.
Good.
And we named our first one Wimpy because Wimpy whines and pees.
Okay. I'm afraid to ask about the other one now, Ron.
Well, the other one is Heidi, and we have Heidi now, and it sounds like the girl's name,
right?
Heidi, but it's actually spelled H-I-G-H space D, and it's the highest note she sings.
Well, isn't that interesting? High D.
High D.
Did you actually sit there with a piano or something and figure out how high the dog goes?
No, we didn't, but we are musicians.
Very clever. That's nice. So you've got two Dachshunds named Wimpy and Heidi.
Right.
Very interesting. We have a dachshund owner in the book, and they were far less original than you. Their dog is named Frankfurt.
Thanks, Ron. Stay listening to the show. Later on, we're going to award copies of the book, A Cat Named Rush Limbaugh, A Dog Named Howard Stern. And Francis, you are putting together a collection then for something else in the future, is that right?
Yes, there will be a sequel depending on the sales of this.
Unusual cat names. Do you know that Ed McMahon named his cat Queen Tut? Vanna White's cat is named Rhett Butler. And Dennis Weaver, who used to be on TV quite a bit, his cat's named Ringo. Got unusual names today. We're going to take your calls now. Francis is with us, and let's go back to the phone lines. Al, you're up next. Al, what's your pet that you're going to tell us about?
It's a Plecostomus.
What is that?
It's a fish that you use in an aquarium to clean the aquarium.
Okay, a fish.
It's about 6 inches long, and it has a great big mouth, and it goes up and down the side of the aquarium, keeping the algae off.
And what's your fish named?
Hoover.
Hoover. Why did you name your fish Hoover?
Because he looks like a vacuum cleaner when he's going up and down.
That's clever. That's good. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, okay.
That's a nice practical name, isn't it, Francis?
Very. Never heard of that kind of fish either.
Let's go to Patrice. Patrice, what are the pets you want to share with us about?
Oh, I have a couple of dogs. We've had actually a lot of animals with strange names, but the living ones we have now are Hazel Honey Bunny. She's a German short-haired pointer, and she was just like a rabbit when she was a pup. She would jump and catch birds out of the air, and she's 13 now. And then we have a Rottweiler Doberman Pinscher mix that we call Reno-Noid II. We had a dog we named Reno. He's just such a honyak, we had to add the Noid on there. My kids have always been real strange. We've had cats named Vladimir. Had 3 triplet kittens named Inky Dinky Doo. And
great. Well, thanks, Patrice. We appreciate you calling in.
Thank you.
Maggie, you're up next on News Radio 1040 WHO. Maggie, what's the pet you're going to tell us about?
First of all, she's a black smoke American Shorthair. Her hair is white, but the tips are black, so that's why they call it a smoke. And her name is Mademoiselle Gabrielle Marcel Lafume Lamaze Lingerie of Paris, Burma, and Bombay.
My goodness.
Say that again.
Well, my girlfriend is a veterinarian. She wasn't raised according to directions. She called her Squartopus, which is, I guess, the bacteria is scab. And I said, I cannot call this beautiful cat that. So I called the Iowa University Foreign Language Department and asked them what smoke was in French, and they said La Fumée. So because she talks, I called her Gabrielle, then Mademoiselle Gabrielle, and she acts out all kinds of things. So I called her Marcel, like Marcel Marceau, then La Fumée, and then she purrs very fast, like so I called her Lamaze, like she's in labor. And because if you pet her backwards, her white hair shows underneath the black tip, I called her Lingerie. And because she's French, I said Paris, and she is a Burmese and Bombay blend. So Mademoiselle Gabrielle Marcel Lafayette Lamaze Lingerie in Paris, Burmese, and Bombay for me.
I'm trying to write this all down because if you win, I've got to be able to repeat it at the end of the show.
Okay, what do you have?
Mademoiselle Gabrielle Marcel Lafumée Lamaze Lingerie Paris, Burma, and Bombay.
Of Paris, Burma, and
Of Paris, Burma, and Bombay. That's pretty good. Maggie, you certainly win the longest name contest, I can tell you that. Thanks a lot for calling in. We appreciate it. Now, Francis, when people name their pets like that long name, obviously she's going to have to shorten it up, right? She's not going to call for her cat that way every day.
Right, yes. Well, that's the longest one I've encountered.
You have other long ones? That chairman of the board one, that was pretty long.
I thought that was long till I heard this one.
Yeah, and this was, 3, 6, 9 or 10 words there in that one. That's pretty long. Jerry, you're up next on Winzenburg on the Weekend. What pets do you have to tell us about?
We've got 2 cats, and my wife and I are both musicians. I don't know, it seems like it'd be a flowing thing here today, but we lost a cat, and we went to the Humane Society, and we picked up, we were going to pick up one, but the one that was on the top cage was crying so much because we were going to take the one on the bottom cage that we took them both. And we figured, he kind of makes some funny sounds, so we named that one Johann Sebastian Bach, and we nicknamed him Sebastian. And my son is 2 years old, calls him Bushkin. And then the other one, we decided, since we had, kind of the classic composers, we went with Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. He's now named Mozart. So that's kind of our story.
Do they recognize their names, I assume?
Oh, definitely. Especially when they get out, we let them outside in the yard, and when they get underneath the fence.
And when they're naughty, do you call them by their full names? Now, Johann Sebastian Bach, you come back here.
Well, we have done that occasionally, but not very often.
Thanks, Jerry, for calling in.
You bet.
Old names, Francis, what about that? People who, you mentioned literature like Hamlet, but some of these, historical figures, that kind of surprises me.
Yeah, we have historical figures. We have figures out of mythology. There's a boxer named Nestor, and Nestor was the wisest man in ancient Greece who advised Odysseus in the Odyssey. A couple of other references to the classics, Shakespeare.
Do you think people name their pets this way because you can't name your kids this way?
That's possible. Yeah.
I mean, you can't name your kid Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Well, somebody did.
I'm sure somebody did, right? I mean, one person did at least. But in this, this day and age, if you named your kid Wolfgang, they might think you're a little unusual in America, at least.
They would, yes. Well, it affords you more freedom and creativity.
Right, you can be more creative and have more fun, and it's a conversation piece as well. That's what's fun about this book, is it gives you a few things to talk about. Yeah. It's called A Cat Named Rush Limbaugh, A Dog Named Howard Stern. Francis, what does that do to a pet if you change the pet's name? Have you thought about any of the psychological implications there?
Well, certainly over years they get used to it. They get used to the sound. It's hard to say.
But I know, if you have a pet, let's say it's 2 or 3 years old, and then you see an ad in the paper, and they're giving the pet away for some reason, and you get it and you change the pet's name. I would think that would cause some confusion for the pet.
I imagine it would, even though they just respond to the sound. Maybe if you said the name in the same tone. Because that's what they hear, really.
So you're saying that you don't think they recognize the specific name, but it's more the tone and the sound.
They recognize the sound.
Yeah.
And the tone. For example, precious would be said precious, as opposed to killer would be said killer.
Okay.
I think they hear the tone more than the actual word in English.
Yeah, that's a good point. Back to the phone lines now. Our guest is author Francis Pfaff from the book A Cat Named Rush Limbaugh, A Dog Named Howard Stern. Christopher, you're up next. Christopher, what's your pet name for us?
Well, we have 2 cats, and one of them's named Pooch. That way we can have a cat and a pooch.
Oh.
And then we used to have a parakeet, and for Christmas my 4-year-old brother wanted just a skinny little live bird, so we called him Skinny.
Skinny.
And he used to say his name. It was really funny. He'd go, Skinny bird, Skinny bird.
And did he ever get fat?
Well, when he died, he had a tumor, so he eventually did get fat. So that wasn't too good.
Wow. Okay, well, thanks for calling, Christopher.
Okay.
Pat, what's your pet that you want to tell us about?
Well, my nephew is a mechanic, and he named his dog Clutch. I mean, his wife had a fit, but he's still alive, and he's still Clutch.
Isn't that something? That's cute. Thanks, Pat. Yeah. Francis, the other day I heard a story. There's a comedian named Stephen Wright.
Yes.
And he named his dog Stay. Because he wanted to confuse the dog, so he'd say, "Come here, Stay." It's pretty mean, I would say.
I think so. And
Amy, you have company this week, don't you?
Yeah, my niece is here, in fact.
Tell us about pets in your family, Amy.
Pets in my family. Well, my parents have a dog named Peanut. Named Peanut because there were 2 dogs in the litter. One had brown markings and one didn't. The one that didn't have brown markings was plain, Of course, the other one was Peanut, because they didn't have almond M&Ms back then. So we had plain and Peanut.
That's
and so they got the dog named Peanut, and they have not changed the dog's name, even because that's hard. So we have a dog named Peanut. My niece has cats named Snowflake, Merlin, Houdini because it disappeared for a while and magically reappeared.
Oh, that's cute.
She in the past has had cats named Midnight, Inky, Cinders. She's very creative in naming her cats, but they live in the country. They don't always live real long.
That's neat.
So name them.
And it's more fun. It's more character, isn't it, to have unusual names like that?
It is. I used to have a dog named Pocahontas.
Yeah. That's cute.
Yeah. Well, I called her Pokey because no one in the family would call her Pocahontas.
Thanks, Amy. Amy's our engineer up here during Winzenburg on the weekend. Francis, I need to ask you, do you have pets?
Do I have a pet? I used to have an African gray bird named Sir Cedric Hardwick.
Oh.
After a celebrated English actor.
Sure.
But, he and I didn't bond, so he's living elsewhere. Living in New York City as I do, my next pet will most likely be a cat.
Yep.
They're more easy to maintain.
Joan, you're up next. Joan, what's your pet?
Our pet's name was Hemo the Magnificent. It was a dog, and this was some time ago, and I was teaching 4th grade and had a student who wanted to give me one of his puppies, and finally I told him he could bring one to school, that I just look at it and decide if I wanted it. And that particular day I showed the film Hemo the Magnificent. I don't know if you remember it.
No, I don't. Tell us about it.
It was a Bell telephone film, and it was about the circulatory system and blood. Hemo meaning blood.
Oh, sure.
And anyway, I held that little puppy all during the 2 hours that the film ran, and by the time it was over, I had fallen in love with the puppy, and I thought Hemo the Magnificent was a nice name for him.
That's neat.
Well, that's a sweet story.
And you have other stories in the book like this where Joan said a certain occurrence happened at the time she got the dog, and so she named the dog after the film that they were showing.
Yeah.
And you have other things like that in the book where something occurs at the time that they get the pet, right?
Right, yes. A cat named Blizzard. They found it during a blizzard.
Right, that type of thing.
Things like that,
Yeah.
yes.
Rosemary, you are up next. Rosemary, what's your pet?
We have a canary,
A canary.
and its name is Jackson, after Michael Jackson.
Oh, my goodness. How old is the canary?
Oh, probably about 4 years old. We had one that was 14 years old.
And what was its name?
Casey.
After Casey and the Sunshine Band? After what? What was Casey named after?
Casey was just named Casey.
I thought you were in kind of a musical mode here. So, now, are you embarrassed at all naming it after Michael Jackson? Since
No, my kids named it after Michael Jackson. It had some black, it had some yellow and white and orange on it, and it imitates the vacuum sweeper. Whenever the vacuum sweeper's going, it sings louder. If I run the mixer, it sings louder, so they just like it.
Well, since you just named it Jackson, you could now change it. You could say it's named after Jesse Jackson or Stonewall Jackson. Or Thanks a lot for calling. Helen, you're up next. Helen, what's your pet?
During World War II, my sisters named their cats after famous people. I don't remember all of them, but the one I remember was Douglas MacArthur.
Oh.
And Douglas MacArthur was still Mac even after she had a couple of litters of kittens.
So it was a female.
It was a female.
It was still Douglas MacArthur.
And while I was in Nigeria, I had a cat I named Speckles. And her one litter, I gave Yoruba names, which was the language they spoke in that area. The one was Taiwo, which is the first one of twins, means taste the world first. One was Kainde, which is the second of the twins, comes afterwards. And then there was Dudu, which is black, and Sunday, which is a boy born on Sunday, and Bossade, which is a girl born on Sunday. And so if I'd call Taiwo, Kainde, Bossade, Sunday, Dudu, they'd come running. I think they would have run just as fast if I'd said 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. But Dudu literally means black in that language?
Yes.
And didn't people think, like, friends who came to visit you or anything, think you were calling it Dudu for another reason?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Thanks, Helen.
Yeah, okay.
It's Pet Name Day on Winzenburg on the weekend on News Radio 1040, WHO Radio. Francis Pfaff is our guest. He's the author of A Cat Named Rush Limbaugh, a dog named Howard Stern. Francis, what are the common names? You know, we're talking about unusual names, But what are some of the most common names that people give pets? Have you studied that at all?
Well, it's been my experience that the more common names like Fido and Rover have kind of faded.
Yeah.
And people are being much more creative and individual with their name. I do know a guy who has an all-black dog named Spot, though.
Now, what about these people who name their animals the incorrect animal? For instance, I know of a dog named Kitty. You'd name a cat Kitty, but they named the dog Kitty. Or I've seen a show where they named a cat Dog.
Right.
Trying to be clever or something like that.
Yes, I haven't encountered much of that. I've known people who named their dog and their cat.
Right.
Cross-species naming, I haven't encountered that much.
People try to be clever, and sometimes it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
Right. Back to the phone line. Stacy, you're up next. Stacy, what's your pet today?
We had a dog that was a collie, and we went to pick him out, my husband and I, and when he saw him, he said he was a dandy. So we named him Dandy, but when it came to registering him, we needed a more unusual name, so we thought that they get a little rough around the neck. So Dandy Lion, we kind of put those two together, and we got him on Valentine's Day, so his full name was Dandy Lion Love. And he was a special dog to us.
But you called him Dandy for short?
We called him Dandy for short.
Dandelion Love.
Dandelion Love, yeah.
And he didn't happen to have a litter or anything, did he? Not another one of those changed, changed genders right in the middle.
No.
Okay.
We stayed a boy.
Great. Thanks, Stacy. That is fun, isn't it, Francis? When you name it one thing and then
right.
it's
Well,
another.
people have nicknames for their pets and official names. My brother had an Irish setter, and he was called all throughout his life Big Toe, but the dog was a pedigree. So for his official papers, he was not called that. He was called Billy Budd after the Herman Melville novel. Yeah.
We took care of a cat last week, and the woman said that originally when the cat was born, they thought it was a boy, so the kids named it Herman, and then later when they took it to the vet, they found out that it was female, and so they just shortened it to Hermie, and it's Hermie the cat. Let's go to Jenny. You're up next. Hi, Jenny. How are you doing today?
I'm fine.
And what's your pet?
My dog his name is Sherlock.
Sherlock?
Sherlock.
After Sherlock Holmes?
Sherlock. L-U-C-K.
Oh, Sherlock.
Sherlock.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And most people do confuse it with Sherlock, even though I tell them it's Sherlock.
Well, why did you name it Sherlock?
Well, my son had piranhas when he was younger, and we always went to the pet store to get goldfish for him. And we would tour the pet store and see what they had there, and they had this little puppy in a cage, and he was about 6 weeks old, and every time we went every other Thursday, he was still there. And I got attached to him, and every time I went in, we'd go look at him and pet him and everything, and it was he was there for about 4 months, and I was beginning to feel sorry for him, and because nobody bought him. And so I asked my husband to buy him for me for my birthday, and he was reluctant because he didn't really want a dog.
Yeah.
And so he finally gave in, and he said, okay, go buy the dog. So I went and bought him, and we brought him home, and we didn't know what to name him. But when we were at the store, at the pet store, the woman said he was lucky that we brought him because they were going to put him to sleep because nobody wanted him. He was almost 6 months old. So we were talking about it and what we were going to name him. And my son says, well, he's sure lucky. So we named him Sherlock.
Why didn't you just name him Lucky?
Well, I don't know. It was just Sherlock.
I mean, because now you do have to explain it every time you tell somebody the dog's name. Instead of Sherlock, you have to say it's Sherlock, right? Do you like that? Do you like to explain it?
Yeah, kind of. We spell it S-H-U-R-L-U-C-K. And, yeah, they get a kick out of it when they hear the explanation.
Well, that's neat. That's a conversation piece then. Good. Thanks, Jenny. Boy, that was quite a story.
That was quite a story. She should email me.
One of the things that I like, Francis, is that people take their pets very seriously.
Very seriously.
Even though some of us from the outside may not take them seriously.
That's right, yes. Very seriously, particularly if, in the instance of single people.
Yes.
Unmarried.
Yes, people who don't have kids, yes.
Right.
Francis, at the end of the book, you have a little section of unusual facts. Tell us about that.
Yes, from the desk of Francis Pfaff, we have interesting little trivia about animals. Did you know that a giraffe's heart weighs 25 pounds?
Wow.
Things like that. Fish have no ears, but They do have something akin to inner ears.
What would they need them for?
That's true, yes. The cockroach is 300
listening to WHO.
Yes.
That's what they would need them for,
Right.
listening to the radio. So,
Yes.
but this is where you've got lots of little tidbits here at the end of the book, and it's kind of fun.
Little trivia, little-known things about the animal world.
All right, let's get back to the phone lines, and then we're going to award those copies of A Cat Named Rush Limbaugh, A Dog Named Howard Stern. Michael, you're up next. Michael, what's your pet?
Well, I have a pet named Sparkle.
What kind of a pet is it?
It's a parakeet.
Oh, now how did you name the pet Sparkles?
Well, Emerald Sparkle, and she's green.
Oh.
And so we named her Sparkle.
Have you ever had any other pets?
Yeah, we have. We had another parakeet.
Mm-hmm.
Its name was Blueberry. Because it was blue.
I see a theme here, Michael. You like those color themes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. Andrea, you're up next on Winzenburg on the Weekend. Hi, Andrea.
I had a cat. One of them he used to leap a lot like a ballet dancer, and then he ended up having knee surgery, so I called him Barishna Cat.
Barishna Cat. That's good. I like that.
I have a litter of kittens right now that are all blue, so I named them after Moody Blue's theme. Like one's Question, one is Moody Blue, one's Bluebird, Blue Jay, and Sky.
I like the Barishna Cat one. That's kind of clever.
That's a good one, yeah.
Thanks, Andrea, for calling. Beverly, you're with our guest Francis Pfaff. Beverly, what's your pet?
I have a Cocker Spaniel,
Okay.
and she's named Yankee Doodle Dandy. She was born on the 4th of July, 1987.
Makes sense.
And we were going to a parade that day, a 4th of July parade, when she decided to be born. And then we have another Cocker named Get Down Fred. Those are their registered names.
Get Down Fred?
Yeah, he kept jumping up on people. And so whenever we would talk to him, it was, Get Down, Fred.
You should have named him Naughty Boy or something. That's cute. I like that. Thanks, Beverly.
Thank you.
Dee, you're up next on Winzenburg on the Weekend. Dee, what have you got?
Well, I don't have a cat anymore. We had her for about 18 years. She was such a delight that I just had to call and share her name with you. I called her Claudia Grace because she loved to claw anything. She loved to claw. She was very awkward. She would go to jump upon something, miss it, and bump her chin or her face, and so she wasn't graceful, so we called her Claudia Grace.
Thanks, Dee.
Thank you.
Francis, as we finish up the show today, what are tips that you have for people as they think about naming their pets?
Oh, I really try not to advise people. There's many ways to do it. Just be what strikes you, whether it be the cat's behavior, whether it be what the cat looks like, or how the cat came into your life, or dog, or whatever. I found that people don't need my help.
And what kind of a response have you had now to the radio shows and the book? What are some of the other things that you've heard from people?
The response has been very good, and certainly, as we've learned today, people love to talk about the subject.
A couple of unusual ones in the book. Tell us about Gallstone.
Well, that man had gallstone surgery, and he had a long history of Chihuahua ownership, so his family gave him a Chihuahua puppy after his surgery, and there's a type of therapy called pet therapy.
Right.
And it helped him through his convalescence, and he named the creature Gallstone.
Gallstone the dog.
Yeah.
And you have another one in there called Dipsy Doodlehead.
Dipsy Doodlehead has no meaning other than to the owner. He just looked at the creature and thought he was a Dipsy Doodlehead.
What's your favorite name in the book?
My favorite name in the book is probably Captain Picard. I'm a Star Trek fan, and
that was the bird?
That was the finch, yes. Another bird named Don Ho. A woman went to the Hawaiian Islands on a business trip, determined to come back with a husband, and she ended up coming back with a parrot, Don Ho.
That's clever. Thanks so much for being with us. We've got those books to give away, and these are the people who need to call us back. You ready? I've gone through my list and picked them out. I like the Barishna Cat. I thought that was kind of cute. So let's give Andrea a book for Barishna Cat. I'm going to do this. I'm going to give it to Jenny. I think this is the weirdest name I've heard. Sherlock the dog. Not Sherlock, but Frosted Ebony Sherlock. I kind of like that. Do you like that Hemo the Magnificent story where she named it after the film that she was watching during class?
That was a great story. That was one of my choices.
She was sitting there holding the dog while she was showing the kids in class the film Hemo the Magnificent. And I've got to give the last one to Maggie, because Maggie has Mademoiselle Gabrielle Marcel Lafume La Maz Lingerie of Paris, Burma, and Bombay. I did it. How about that?
That's great. Good choices. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.